everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of the Cleveland Sports Show on NordoniaHills.News. I am your host, Darius Sethna. Man, do we have a lot to talk about today. Lionel Messi trade updates, Columbus Crew, FC Cincinnati Derby Part 1 is in the books. The NBA news has been just out of this world this last week, especially with the playoffs now getting in the true grind. We also have WNBA updates for you. The Indians have won their last two games, and we have some highlights and team transactions with the Cleveland Browns. It all starts right now on the Cleveland Sports Show. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Darius Sethna of NordoniaHills.News, and the Cleveland Sports Show starts right now. Hello everyone, welcome to this week's edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. Once again, I am your host, Darius Sethna. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me this week. Today is September 4th, and on this day, 104 years ago, in 1916, we have some baseball facts for you today. The Cincinnati Reds defeat the Chicago Cubs 10-8 at Weeghman Park, which is today known as Wrigley Field in Chicago. Cincinnati's Christy Mathewson and Chicago's Mordecai, nicknamed Three Finger Brown, hurl complete games. The Reds acquired Mathewson in a trade with the New York Giants on July 20th and immediately named him the club's manager. Today's appearance is his first as a member of the Reds and the last of his major league career. Mathewson's 373 lifetime victories record is tied for third all-time with Pete Alexander and trails only Cy Young who has 511 and Walter Johnson who has 417. Mathewson will be one of the original 5 inductees into the Hall of Fame in 1936. Today, he will also be Brown's last game in the majors, which is September 4th, 1916. He'll join Mathewson in the Hall of Fame back in 1949. So, man, all of these facts before 1950. So that tells you we have some pretty old sports facts for you. I love this sports fact book that I have. It will take me basically anywhere in time. There have been baseball facts from the inception of the MLB in the 1880s. So that's why I love the sports fact of the day. Gives you such a great perspective on how sports were different back then, what has stayed the same today. It's just been great. I love the sports fact of the week. You know what I also love? Trade rumors. And that's right, we're going to head to the soccer world right now. And it is official. Lionel Messi is staying in Barcelona. He will not be traded in the near future. A report in Argentina stated that Messi will stay with Barcelona until June 30th of 2021. That is the date Lionel Messi's contract will officially expire with Barcelona. Jorge Messi, who is Lionel Messi's father and agent, wrote that the buyout clause, quote, open quote, the buyout clause does not apply in Lionel's contract, close quote. And he also stated that the league misread his contract. Now, Messi still has shown signs that he is unhappy with Barcelona. With reported interest from Manchester City and Paris Saint-Germain, Messi failed to show up for his coronavirus testing and training this week, so he's clearly not very invested in his Barcelona squad. This is all thanks to Roger Gonzalez of CBS News Sports and Soccer. From this article, was able to get some updates from him. And that is essentially what's going on with Lionel Messi. You can expect him to be staying with Barcelona for the very foreseeable future. We'll see what happens. Again, Messi's contract will expire June 30th of 2021. Let's head back across the Atlantic to the United States and the MLS, where we will not be having games for the next 2 days. We didn't have any games this past Thursday, and we will not have any today, Friday, September 4th, either. Tomorrow is when things will officially kick back off again. Houston Dynamo will be taking on Sporting Kansas City tomorrow at 8 p.m. Orlando City and Atlanta United will be facing off tomorrow at that same time. Vancouver will be hosting Toronto FC, a Battle of Canada there for you, at 9:30 p.m. And finally, the final match of the day tomorrow, San Jose Earthquakes and the Colorado Rapids will be facing off at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I did mention that we had Ohio Derby Part 1 in the books between FC Cincinnati and Columbus. FC Cincinnati were hosting Columbus this past Saturday, August 29th, and a little bit of a disappointing result, a 0-0 draw between the two teams. Columbus, with more shots on goal than Cincinnati, 3 shots on target for them compared to only 2 for FC Cincinnati. In terms of shots in general, whether they were on or off target, Columbus with 2 more shots compared to FC Cincinnati. Crew with 7 shots, FC Cincinnati with 5 shots. Crew dominated the possession in this one, 62% of the possession in favor of Columbus. Columbus also with 200 more passes completed than FC Cincinnati. Pass accuracy at about 87%. We had a lot of fouls in this game too. A combined 35 fouls in this game and 5 total yellow cards between these two teams. Certainly a rather violent Ohio Derby, to say the least. However, it ends in a stalemate 0-0 for these two teams. In terms of the Columbus Crew, they did have one more game after that 0-0 draw with FC Cincinnati. They actually returned home to Columbus at MAPFRE Stadium and defeated the Philadelphia Union by a final score of 1-0. Thanks to a 55th minute goal from Lucas Zelarayan, the Crew hold on to a 1-0 lead and defeat the Philadelphia Union. For the Crew, their upcoming schedule is Ohio Derby Part 2. That will be this upcoming Sunday, 7:30. This time it will be at MAPFRE Stadium in Columbus. Crew will be hosting FC Cincinnati. In terms of FC Cincinnati, they too had a game this past Wednesday, September 2nd. Another 0-0 draw for them. This time it was at home again against the Chicago Fire, a team who they lost to the week prior 3-0. So Cincinnati not able to gain their revenge they would have hoped to get at home. For FC Cincinnati, their schedule consists of Columbus, once again, as I mentioned, in Columbus for Ohio Derby Part 2, and then they will be heading to New York City for a matchup with NYCFC, 2-game road trip for FC Cincinnati. In terms of the overall standings for the MLS, Columbus is actually in first place. Yes, that we were talking about a team who last year was at the bottom of the league. Them and FC Cincinnati were at the bottom of the league. Columbus, with 9 matches played, 6 wins, 2 draws, and only 1 loss. They have 20 points on the season so far. Toronto FC is trailing behind them, 2 points behind them. 9 matches played for them, 5 wins, 3 draws, and 1 loss. To round out the top 5 in the MLS Eastern Conference, Orlando City with 15, Philadelphia also tied with them with 15 points, and the Montreal Impact with 8 matches played, 4 wins, 3 draws, and 2 losses. 4 wins, 1 draw, and 3 losses for Montreal. In the Western Conference, Sporting Kansas City with 17 points, 9 matches played in the season for them. They have 5 wins, 2 draws, and 2 losses. The Seattle Sounders with 8 matches played, 4 wins, 3 draws, and a loss. LAFC, who were the champions of the Western Conference last year, were basically running the mill with the Western Conference. No competition for them last year. They were the top seed. They have 8 matches played so far, 3 wins, 3 draws, and 2 losses for only 12 points. Minnesota and the LA Galaxy round out the top 5 in the West for you this week, each of those teams with 11 points. And now it's the moment we've all been waiting for, the NBA playoffs. The semifinal round is finally here, and man, what a week it has been in the NBA playoffs. Let's start out with our first series. We're going to go to the Eastern Conference. Miami Heat, Milwaukee Bucks. This was a series I was a little bit nervous with Milwaukee for, because just the Miami Heat were the only team in the regular season who actually defeated the Bucks more than once. In fact, the Bucks didn't even beat the Miami Heat before the coronavirus hiatus and the suspension put the league on hold. The Bucks actually had to overcome a significant deficit to the Miami Heat in the bubble here a few weeks ago in the seeding games to defeat Miami, and that was a game that Jimmy Butler didn't even play in. However, we had our semifinal matchup. The 1 seed, Milwaukee Bucks, and the 5th seed, Miami Heat. Even though this Miami Heat was a 5th seed, they were playing honestly like they were a top 3 seed. Jimmy Butler in Game 1 with 40 points, dropped 40 on Giannis Antetokounmpo in 36 minutes to go along with 4 rebounds and 2 assists. Jay Crowder with 9 points in 35 minutes. Bam Adebayo, 12 points. Goran Dragic, the second leading scorer for Miami in Game 1. 27 points for Goran Dragic in 34 minutes. For the Milwaukee Bucks, Giannis Antetokounmpo had a rather pedestrian performance with only 18 points in 37 minutes. He did have a double-double thanks to 10 rebounds as well. 28 points for Chris Middleton, the top scorer for Milwaukee, in 37 minutes to go along with 5 assists and 6 rebounds. The Heat would defeat Milwaukee 115-104 to take a 1-0 lead in this best-of-7 series. So this is the second straight time in these playoffs that the Bucks have dropped the opening game of their playoff series. And it didn't get any better for them in Game 2. Game 2 was a much more pedestrian performance from Jimmy Butler. He did not drop 40, but he did drop 13 in 36 minutes. Hit some crucial free throws. We'll get to that in a bit. Jay Crowder had a much stronger game. 16 points for him in 36 minutes. Much more balanced scoring effort from Miami. Goran Dragic was actually the leading scorer for the Heat with 23 points in 34 minutes to go along with 5 rebounds and 4 assists. For Milwaukee, Giannis, this time a little better performance, 29 points in 36 minutes for him. Chris Middleton with 23 points in 33 minutes to go along with 8 assists and 6 rebounds. The Heat win Game 2 116-114 in dramatic fashion. Miami was actually up by about 8 in the closing seconds of this game, but they just completely fell apart. I mean, if you talk about choking, that was it for Miami. Jimmy Butler with a careless pass under his own basket, intercepted by Milwaukee's Brook Lopez. Lopez hits a layup. Next thing you know, we're at a tie game. Miami, there were a lot more things going on, but in a sense, Miami and Milwaukee were tied. And the reason they were tied is because at the end of the game, Chris Middleton went up for a 3-point attempt. And if you see the replay in Game 2, I urge you to go to YouTube and watch the replay of Chris Middleton taking that shot against Goran Dragic. Goran Dragic, I swear to you, is straight up. His hands are straight up. Middleton runs into Dragic. However, the referees did not see it that way. They called a foul on Goran Dragic, which meant, since the Heat were up 3, Middleton could tie the game, and that's exactly what he did at 114 apiece. As we go down to the final seconds with Miami's final offensive possession, Jimmy Butler, who else, has the ball. And when this is going on, Jimmy Butler is fading back on the baseline, and we see Giannis Antetokounmpo slightly touch his back, and Jimmy Butler falls down, and we have another foul call. I will say this, the refereeing was consistently poor. So if you make one bad call on one end, you have to make a bad call on another end. I'll be honest with you, it was a slight touch from Giannis Antetokounmpo, really nothing to be considered a foul, but I mean, after that horrible call against Goran Dragic, you have to make that call just as well. So the Miami Heat actually with some walk-off free throws here. And if Jimmy Butler hit at least one free throw, the Heat would have won the game. Jimmy Butler, just for good measure, hit 2 free throws, and the Heat beat the Bucks in walk-off dramatic fashion in Game 2, 116-114. Miami now has a 2-0 lead on Milwaukee, and here's what Jimmy Butler had to say. This is thanks to the post-game interview, thanks to the House of Highlights YouTube channel. This is what Jimmy Butler had to say in terms of some of the analysts and what they're saying about the Miami Heat, and how the Heat themselves aren't particularly focused on what they have to say.
I said it time and time again, we truly do not care what other people say. Because the same people that think, oh, yada, 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 will be the same ones that say when something doesn't go our way. So we stay focused on what we can, we control what we can, and we're not looking at it like we're up 2-0. This 0-0, we're going home, and we're expecting to win the next one.
Now, I will definitely say this. I am very impressed with what Jimmy Butler has been able to do these last 2 games against Milwaukee. And the reason being is that he's been a different player in each of those 2 games. Now, what do I mean by that? In Game 1, Miami needed Jimmy Butler to be a scorer. Miami and Eric Spoelstra, the head coach of the Heat, said, look, Jimmy, we need you to be Jimmy Buckets. We need you to go out there and score. We don't want you to pass. We don't really need you to rebound. We need you to get buckets. And that's exactly what Jimmy Butler did. 40 points and only 2 assists. He was the leading scorer by far for Miami. As I mentioned, Goran Dragic, the second leading scorer with 27. That obviously helped the cause for the Heat. But Jimmy Butler was the go-to guy in Game 1. And here's what impressed me. In Game 2, that was not the case for Jimmy Butler. In Game 2, Jimmy Butler was a completely different player. In game number 2, Jimmy Butler had 6 assists, so he had 3 times as many assists as he did in Game 1, and only 13 points. The balanced scoring was there for Miami in Game 2. Jay Crowder with 16, Bam Adebayo with 15, Goran Dragic with 23 points, Duncan Robinson, 13, Tyler Hero, 17, Kelly Olynyk, 11. There were so many guys in double figures. In fact, if I count right now, there were 9 players for the Miami Heat who were in double figures in game number, 10 players in game number 2 who were in double digits scoring for the Miami Heat. That actually was the first time in their playoff history that was the case. And Jimmy Butler led the way for Miami. And we'll see what happens. Game 3 of this best-of-7 series continues tonight. This is technically a Heat home game, so we'll see. Can Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Milwaukee Bucks come up with a game win that they will desperately need in order to keep their season alive? Let's move on to our next series. And this is actually we're going back to the Western Conference first round. Oklahoma City Thunder, Houston Rockets, Game 7. Russell Westbrook is back for Houston. Chris Paul and the Thunder look to derail his former teammate James Harden. Here's what happened. OKC actually jumped out to a 1-point lead, 30-29 after the first quarter. However, they were outscored in the second, 32-29, and they were outscored in the third as well by 3, 24-21. Although they outscored Houston 22-19 in the fourth quarter, they were not able to put this one away. James Harden with the play of the game. Luguentz Dort, who is from the Quebec, Canada, 30 points in 35 minutes. He made some history. Not only was he the leading scorer for Oklahoma City in Game 7, however, he also is now he now has the most points for an undrafted NBA player in a Game 7. Yes, I know that's a little long-winded, but hey, that is a pretty amazing stat if you think about it. Undrafted to now scoring 30 points in a Game 7, do or die. Oklahoma City only lost this game by 2. And as I mentioned, James Harden with a huge defensive play on Luguentz Dort. The way it happened was James Harden blocked what would have been Dort's go-ahead 3-point bucket. And as we see in basketball, the players try to throw the ball off their opponent in order to keep possession. However, James Harden knew that, and he jumped over Dort's attempt to throw it at him, and it ended up being Rockets' ball. It was a huge defensive performance by James Harden in a game where he was pretty terrible offensively. Only 17 points in 37 minutes, 9 assists, 3 rebounds. Nothing was going his way. However, it ended up being a Rockets win. And a lot was on the line for Houston for this game. A lot of people were saying, head coach Mike D'Antoni would have been fired after this if they were to lose to Oklahoma City. They would have questioned their methods moving forward in terms of this small ball approach that they've been doing. And here's what James Harden had to say via ESPN, that this is what he had to say in terms of competing against some former foes he knew from Houston, mostly Chris Paul.
Like I said, they scrapped it. CB made some big shots, especially in the fourth quarter. Shea, they're all their guards, man. They make plays, and so we want to contain the dribble and contest shots when we have to. And then at the end of the possession, rebound the basketball. So I think we did a really good job, especially towards the end of the game. And just happy to come up with the win.
And Rockets certainly happy to come up with the win, but they also come up with a second-round matchup against LeBron James and the Los Angeles Lakers. Game 1 of that series will begin tonight. The Rockets are in some deep trouble here because they are small. The Lakers are a much larger team. They're much taller. Just think about it. You have Anthony Davis and LeBron already. How are the Rockets going to be able to compete with Los Angeles? They're already going to get out-rebounded. So, to me, what's going to need to happen in this series is that James Harden can't be scoring 17 points. Russell Westbrook, he has been improving, but he can't have that turnover-ridden performance that he had in Game 6 against the Thunder. I am looking at the two superstar guards of James Harden and Russell Westbrook. They're going to need to get other guys involved as well. I need to see Ben McLemore actually play, because this is a guy who I think is a quality three-point shooter for the Rockets. Maybe you get Tyson Chandler in there as well. I've seen Tyson Chandler sitting on the bench in all these Houston games. I don't know if he's injured. We'll see. But this would definitely help the Houston Rockets. And, Tyson Chandler's a former Laker. He played for the Lakers last year, so he might know a little bit about what LeBron has to offer. So let's see. This will be a very interesting series. Rockets-Lakers Game 1 series begins tonight. Let's move to our next series. We're going back to the Eastern Conference, and the Boston Celtics have been very impressive. They already have more playoff wins than they did last year. I know it's only by one game. However, hey, that is an improvement. In Game 1, the Celtics destroy the Raptors, the defending champion Raptors, in Game 1, 112-94. Jason Tatum, 21 points in 37 minutes. Jaylen Brown with 17 in 31 minutes. Daniel Theis has been very impressive for Boston, especially given the fact that they don't have a legitimate center. Theis with 13 points in 25 minutes to go along with 15 rebounds. The only player in Game 1 for the Celtics to have double-digit rebounding. For the Raptors, however, Pascal Siakam struggled. The former most improved player with only 13 points in 34 minutes. OG Anunoby with only 12 points in 33 minutes. Kyle Lowry was the leading scorer for Toronto, and he didn't even hit 20. So I'm looking at this Raptors team, and to me, it just seemed that they played undisciplined basketball and were just not ready for what the Celtics had to offer. The Celtics were also just too big for Toronto, out-rebounding them by 10. 50 rebounds for Boston compared to only 40 for the Raptors. The Raptors also could not put the ball in the basket. They were just struggling to shoot from three-point range. Toronto would finish 10 from 40 from three-point range. Worst margin in playoff history for the Toronto Raptors, and it wasn't any better in Game 2. Now, Game 2 was a much more competitive match. It was actually tied at the end of the first quarter. And although the Celtics outscored Toronto in the second quarter, the Raptors poured it on in the third, scoring 30 points in the third quarter compared to only 20 for the Celtics. However, Boston, with a huge fourth quarter, 32-21, outscored Toronto in that fourth quarter. and won the game 102-99. Jason Tatum was with an all-star performance, 34 points in 42 minutes to go along with 8 rebounds and 6 assists. Jaylen Brown contributed 16 points as well in 36 minutes. Daniel Tice, not as strong of a performance, but gave them solid minutes. Marcus Smart hit 5 threes in this game, so 15 of his 19 overall points came from behind the arc. We have seen Marcus Smart really improving, and I could definitely see why he could have been a candidate for most improved player this year. However, the right person won that. Brandon Ingram of the New Orleans Pelicans, shout out to him. Huge honor. He was phenomenal this year. First All-Star appearance. He was terrific. Really enjoyed watching him play. But as I said, Marcus Smart was terrific as well for Boston. Kemba Walker, we are seeing him. He doesn't have to get 40 points like he did in Charlotte to win games. I'm really enjoying what I've been seeing from him. It looks like he's in much more of a groove. He also had 6 rebounds and 4 assists as well. For the Raptors, Pascal Siakam with only 17 points was an improvement, but it's not enough when you are really the second guy behind Kyle Lowry. Fred VanVleet, 19 points in 43 minutes. He had a strong performance. OG Anunoby was actually the top scorer for Toronto with 20 points in 38 minutes. And Game 3 between the Celtics and the Raptors. Celtics up 2-0 in this series and are up by 2 in Game 3 with 0.5 remaining. 0.5 of a second left to go in Game 3. And with the Celtics up 2, here's what happens.
Series on the line. Anunoby got it off, and it goes! Did it count is the question. OG Anunoby buries a triple at the buzzer.
And that triple would count. Raptors defeat the Celtics in dramatic fashion, 104-103, thanks to an OG Anunoby game winner. OG Anunoby would only finish the game with 12 points, 10 rebounds. He did have a double-double. Pascal Siakam, 16 points in 38 minutes for him. Kyle Lowry with his highest scoring playoff game since May of 2016, when he had 35 points in game number 4 against our Cleveland Cavaliers in the 2016 Eastern Conference Finals. For the Celtics, Kemba Walker with his strongest game of the series, 29 points in 39 minutes for him. But Jaylen Brown, he did have 19 points. Jason Tatum had a poor performance, though. We know he can do better. This guy is an all-star. He was an all-star for the first time this year. 15 points in 39 minutes. That's just not going to get it done for Boston. But here are my takeaways from this series. With Game 4 tomorrow, with the Celtics trying to take a 3-1 lead, here are my takeaways. I honestly thought the Toronto Raptors were going to win this series. The reason being is one word: bench. I thought the bench depth for Toronto was superior to Boston. And if you look at this, we have Serge Ibaka coming off the bench. You have Norman Powell. You had OG Anunoby, who is back after being injured in the playoffs last year. However, they had Kawhi Leonard, so that really was no big deal. Fred VanVleet now has the shooting guard position. This is a guy who was coming off the bench, especially when DeMar DeRozan was in Toronto. You had Marc Gasol, and I thought this bench just seemed a little bit more productive for Toronto. It seemed like they had guys all over the place who could score, especially Terrence Davis coming off the bench. This was a guy who I really enjoyed watching. You had Stanley Johnson, a former Piston, who's also on this Raptors team. So I just thought the Toronto bench, it's not the best bench in the NBA, but I certainly thought it was superior to Boston's bench. However, I'm seeing that, and that's not the case. It just seems that Boston is too big for Toronto. We were looking at Jason Tatum. Yeah, he only had 15 points in Game 3 yesterday. However, this is a guy who can create his own shot when he wants, however he wants. You see Jaylen Brown. This is a guy whose three-point ability is really starting to impress me. This is a guy who primarily likes to play inside, but now that he's getting that outside shot working, who knows where this guy can go. You also have guys like Kemba Walker, who now can play off the ball and doesn't have to average 40 a game. So I still think the Celtics are in great position to win this series. I actually expect them to win this series in 6. I'm going to give the Raptors another game just because they're the defending champs, and I'm not expecting them to lose to this Celtics team in 5 games. I definitely think this will be a 6-game series, if possibly not 7, but I don't think the Celtics are going to let it go that far. I thought the coaching at the end of Game 3 was poor by Brad Stevens. In that final play, you actually had, for the Celtics defending the ball, you had Taco Fall in the game. I was a little bit surprised why Taco Fall was in this game. The other closers out there for the Celtics were Tice, Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, and Jason Tatum. The only reason I see Taco Fall being in the closing minutes of Game 3, or seconds, was because he was on the inbounder. He was on Lowry, who was inbounding the ball, who eventually would find OG Anunoby, and maybe Taco Fall was just the biggest barrier on the Celtics, so maybe that would help. But Taco Fall's not a very athletic player, and I just really didn't see how this would have worked. I'd rather would have liked to see maybe Enes Kanter or maybe Jason Tatum on him, or maybe even Marcus Smart. Who knows? But OG Anunoby knows that he hit the biggest shot of his life. And here's what he had to say in terms of his team celebration after the game.
I was excited. Everyone was excited for me, so it was cool. Someone hit me in the nose. So I was kind of mad about that, but it's cool.
And hopefully OG Anunoby's nose is cool because the Raptors need to get ready for Game 4. As I said, that'll be tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. The Celtics looking to take a 3-1 lead in this best-of-7 series. The Raptors, the defending champions, looking to tie this series at 2 games apiece. And our final series that we're going to discuss today is the Denver Nuggets and the Los Angeles Clippers. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this in this series because I want to talk about what happened in Game 7 between the Nuggets and Jazz. The Nuggets overcome a 3-1 deficit to the Utah Jazz, and Game 7 was just completely bonkers. Mike Conley of the Utah Jazz misses the game-winning opportunity for Utah. I am surprised Utah is not facing the Clippers right now, but I did say this last week. I just think Denver is the more complete team. You have guys like Jamal Murray, Paul Millsap, Jokic, Gary Harris, Michael Porter Jr. is coming into his own. I like what Torrey Craig and Monte Morris can bring me off the bench, and I just really like the overall chemistry of this Nuggets team, along with head coach Mike Malone. This is a quality basketball team, and they proved that in their previous series against Utah. Donovan Mitchell will be signing an extension with the Jazz, so good for him. He's getting his money. He deserves to get his money, especially after that unbelievable first-round performance we saw from him against Jamal Murray. Those two going back and forth, really just phenomenal to watch. If you weren't able to see them go up against each other, I highly recommend that you go to YouTube and watch some of their clips. They were just absolutely unbelievable. However, I just mentioned that the Denver Nuggets are a quality basketball team. They were not a quality basketball team last night in Game 1 against the LA Clippers. It was a blowout. The LA Clippers coming off a few days rest now, thanks to their defeat of the Dallas Mavericks and Luka Doncic in 6 games. Clippers winning that series 4-2, and they were well rested. The Nuggets played only 2 days before Game 1, and it showed. The game was tied, actually, after the first quarter at 31 apiece, but the second quarter was just a blowout for Los Angeles. 38-20 for second quarter score in favor of the Clippers. Kawhi Leonard was fantastic in this game. 29 points in 32 minutes, and to go along with 3 assists and 2 rebounds. He was just on one. Marcus Morris also with 18 points in 27 minutes. Paul George, 19 points in 33 minutes. I'm just looking at these guys. These are all 3 guys, Leonard, Morris, and George, who can create their own shot whenever they want, however they want. It was just amazing to see the ease they had in creating their own shot. And that's why the Clippers are just so dominant. You have so many guys who basically have offensive talent. They just know how to put the ball in the hole. Montrezl Harrell, who is a 6th Man of the Year candidate, 15 points in 19 minutes for him to go along with 3 rebounds and 2 assists. Harrell really is that energy player, along with Patrick Beverley. Patrick Beverley, stat line isn't really the best, 8, 6, and 2, but this is a guy who's going to hustle, who's going to give you his heart every game, and that's what I love about this Clippers team. However, given the fact that Denver just came off a Game 7, a dramatic Game 7 nonetheless as well, to the Utah Jazz, I didn't expect them to win this game, and I'm not really surprised that this game was a blowout. The Clippers were well rested. Now we'll see how Denver can adjust to what LA threw at them. I'm going to say Clippers again in 6 games like they did with the Mavericks. Although I think Denver is a well-balanced team, I just don't think they have the firepower that's necessary to defeat this Clippers team. Yeah, Nikola Jokic is great. Yeah, Jamal Murray's great. Gary Harris is coming back. You have Monte Morris, but they just don't have the firepower. We're talking about Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Lou Williams, Montrezl Harrell, Marcus Morris Sr., who's coming out and really just been phenomenal for the Clippers. This is not going to be a very competitive series. However, I will give Denver 2 games in this series. I feel like I'm being nice to them. I won't be surprised if the Clippers win this thing in 5, honestly, with how Game 1 went yesterday. I gave Philadelphia 2 games against the Celtics, and look what happened. They got swept. So I feel like I'm being a little too nice to some of these teams. But hey, I think Jamal Murray can really play. I like what Gary Harris can contribute. And I think Nikola Jokic is going to have some great games in this series. However, I say Clippers in 6 against the Denver Nuggets for right now. And ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our playoff talk for the NBA, but we do have some quick NBA news for you outside the bubble. Steve Nash, who is a 2-time NBA MVP, 2004, 2005, and 2005-2006 seasons, he is one of 3 point guards, along with Magic Johnson and Stephen Curry, to win the NBA MVP award multiple times, is now officially the head coach of the Brooklyn Nets. That's right, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving have their new coach for the next 4 years. Steve Nash signed a 4-year deal with Brooklyn. He will be the head coach of the Nets. I think this is a pretty decent move for the Nets. I was a little disappointed. I really thought that Tyronn Lue and Mark Jackson were the top 2 candidates for this job, but something that I'm very happy about as well, obviously Steve Nash has a phenomenal basketball mind. You have a point guard who's winning, back-to-back MVPs. This guy knows what he's doing in terms of drawing up plays in the X's and O's. However, what really makes me happy is seeing Jacques Vaughn still having a place with this Nets squad. I think his performance as a coach in Orlando was fantastic. I know they got swept by the Raptors, but they weren't really expected to do anything great in that series. And the team camaraderie on that Nets team in the bubble was just fantastic. They beat the Clippers. They beat the Bucks. They had some huge wins down in Orlando, and I'm very glad to see that Jacques Vaughn still has a position with this Nets squad as an assistant coach. And now you have the basketball savant of Steve Nash. This is going to be a great coaching staff that Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, and the rest of the Nets crew are going to have. So just thought I'd share that with you guys. If you didn't know, Steve Nash, former Phoenix Suns superstar, is now the head coach of the Brooklyn Nets and will be the head coach for Brooklyn for the next 4 years. Let's go on to the WNBA now from their bubble in Bradenton, Florida. We have some matches today. The Chicago Sky will be taking on the Washington Mystics at 7 p.m. The Minnesota Lynx will be taking on the Dallas Wings at 8 p.m. today, and the Seattle Storm will be taking on the LA Sparks at 10 p.m. We did have some games yesterday. The Atlanta Dream, defeated the New York Liberty 62-56. Our overall scoreline, Courtney Williams, the top scorer for Atlanta, 32 minutes for her, 13 rebounds and 2 assists. So she was able to get that double-double. For the New York Liberty, Kia Nurse and Liana Odom combined for 24 of their 56 points. So those two really leading the charge for New York. In terms of the overall standings for the WNBA in the Eastern Conference, the Chicago Sky lead the East with 11 wins and 7 losses. They're the only team in the East with at least 10 wins. The Connecticut Sun come in at in second place and in the Eastern Conference, and they're the only team. The Chicago Sky are the only team in the Eastern Conference with a winning record. The other teams have losing records. The Sun are at 8-10. The Atlanta Dream are at 5-13. The Fever are at 5-13 as well. The Mystics are at 4-12, and the New York Liberty are 2-15. The Western Conference, though, is really where it gets a lot more competitive. There's only one. I mentioned how there was only one team in the East with a winning record. Well, there's only one team in the West with a losing record. The Seattle Storm are 14-3. They've won their last 3 games and are 8-2 in their last 10. The LA Sparks are 13-4, 9-1 in their last 10 games. That is the best record for a team in their last 10 games in the WNBA. The Aces at 13-4 as well. The Minnesota Lynx at 12-5. They've won their last 2 games. The Mercury at 11-7. Phoenix have won their last 5 games and are 6-4 in their last 10. And finally, the Dallas Wings, the only team in the Western Conference in the WNBA with a losing record. 3-7 in their last 10 games, have struggled as of late, and are 6-11 on the season so far. And Cleveland fans, hey, it's been a decent week for the Indians, and it also helped with thanks to a 5-0 win against the Royals. Here's some game footage and some audio brought to you by the MLB from this Indians win.
Now the 2-1. Swung on, grounded sharply towards second, fielded in shallow right. Hernandez spins, throws, ball game. The Indians have pitched their Major League best 6th shutout and take the Kansas City Royals 5-0.
And that 5-0 victory for the Indians was just what they needed. The Indians, as I mentioned, defeat Kansas City 5-0. That was their most recent win. They also defeated the Royals this past Tuesday, September 1st, and kick off September the right way with a 10-1 victory. The Indians scored 5 runs after 2 innings and scored 3 more runs in the 7th, just poured it on throughout this game, and it seemed pretty clear that the Indians have some momentum. The Indians will be taking on the Milwaukee Brewers today at Progressive Field in Cleveland. First pitch is at 7:10 p.m., and that will begin a 3-game series at Progressive Field between Milwaukee and Cleveland. The Indians then have 3 more home games at Progressive Field, this time a rematch with the Kansas City Royals, and 4 more games against the Royals at Progressive Field. Then they'll be heading out to Minneapolis for a matchup in 3 games with the Minnesota Twins. In terms of the overall MLB standings for the Cleveland Indians, they are now first place in the American League Central Division. They're 6-4 in their last 10 games, so haven't been very convincing, but they are 14-7 on the road. As I mentioned, their away record is actually better than their home record. They are 9-7 at home, but their away record is superior. Their overall record is 23-14. They have about a 62% win percentage. In second place in the American League Central Division are the White Sox, followed by the Twins, Tigers, and Kansas City Royals. So Royals are 14-24. They're 3-7 in their last 10 games. Let's see if the Indians can pick up from where they left off in Kansas City and defeat the Royals 4 straight times. Let's see if they'll be able to do it. That series will begin on September 7th. And our Cleveland Browns have made some team transactions. With the Browns season very, very close by, which will be they'll be starting it off against the Baltimore Ravens. They had a busy day yesterday, September 3rd. They waived J.T. Hassel, they waived Jamon Moore, and they waived Donnie Lewis Jr. They also acquired Ronnie Harrison from the Jacksonville Jaguars in exchange for a 2021 fifth-round draft pick. They also waived Ricky WAKR yesterday, so they've had a pretty busy day. We'll see what all of this will mean for Baker Mayfield, Odell Beckham, and the crew, as the Browns' schedule will begin very, very soon. Actually, this is next week will be opening week of the NFL. Sunday, the 13th of September, mark your calendars. The Baltimore Ravens will be taking on the Cleveland Browns. That game will be in Baltimore. Week 2, the Browns will head back to Cleveland at First Energy Stadium for the Ohio rivalry in the NFL for a matchup with the Cincinnati Bengals. And ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this week's edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. Ladies and gentlemen, I would just like to say thank you very much for all of your time this week. We had a lot to cover, and I'm very happy to have shared all of this work with you. In terms of where you can find my other work on NordoniaHills.News, just go to NordoniaHills.News. Actually, you can go to the contributors section in that tab, and I am the second one down. You can catch up on episodes of the Cleveland Sports Show. I've also been writing a lot of articles, some player bios for you to see. You can also access all of my work on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @NordoniaSports, or you can type in my name, spelled DARAYUSSETHNA. We also have the Cleveland Sports Show on SoundCloud.com. Just type in my name, DARAYUSSETHNA, and you'll be able to access all of my interviews and other Cleveland Sports Show episodes. We also have the Cleveland Sports Show on the go, so wherever you are, you can listen to the Cleveland Sports Show on Spotify. That's right, Cleveland Sports Show is on Spotify. Just type in my name, DARAYUSSETHNA, and all of your Cleveland sports needs will be fulfilled in that Spotify channel. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me this week. Until our next episode, take care and have a terrific week. Thank you so much for your time, everyone.